Hi, I'm Nick Colonna. Join Minnie and me for our short stories.
Just Minnie and Me. After a grieving couple began seeing a shadowy blur of their dead calico cat moving through their home, they dismiss it as imagination, until a violent intruder breaks in and is savagely attacked by an unseen force, forcing them to confront a chilling truth. The spirit of their beloved cat has returned, and it's watching, waiting, and willing to protect at any cost.
Minnie was not just your ordinary calico. Everyone in the neighborhood said that. But no one understood just how far her instincts reached until the morning the sirens came. Nick used to laugh when he talked to her, not in a mocking way, but the kind of laugh a man gives when he hopes something impossible might actually be true. Every morning, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, he would kneel beside Minnie and say, "Okay, kid, if something happens, you press this." He'd tap the emergency button on his phone, once, twice, over and over again. Minnie would watch, not blink, not move, just watch. 911, he'd whisper, like it was a secret only they shared. Nick and his cat playing pretend. But Minnie wasn't pretending. She learned the rhythm of his voice, the way his finger pressed, held, and released. She memorized it the way animals remember danger, the same way they sense earthquakes before the ground even trembles. And then, one quiet morning, something changed. It was just after sunrise. The street was still. A man, no one knew his name at first, was walking past Nick's house. Slow steps, losing his balance. He reached the sidewalk in front of the gate, paused, and then collapsed. No sound, no cry, just a sudden, heavy silence. Inside the house, Minnie lifted her head. There was no voice, no command, but something in the air shifted, something wrong. Nick's phone sat on the kitchen counter, exactly where he always left it. Minnie jumped up, her paws landing softly beside it. For a moment, she hesitated, not out of confusion, but as if confirming something only she could sense. Then she pressed. Not a tap, not a swipe. A deliberate push, paw down, hold, release. The phone lit up. The emergency call engaged. On the other end, a dispatcher heard only silence at first, then faint movement, the soft scrape of something against a countertop. 911, what's your emergency? Nothing. But the system had already done its job. The location lit up her computer, the address locked. Within minutes, sirens cut through the stillness of the street. Outside, the man lay motionless, his breathing shallow, his pulse fading. Police arrived first. They found him just in time, barely conscious, slipping away. They worked quickly, urgently, holding him between moments. When the paramedics arrived, they took over, stabilizing him just enough to bring him back from somewhere he might not have returned. Inside the house, Minnie sat by the door, waiting. When Nick came home later that day, the street was no longer quiet. Police cars, neighbors gathered, a kind of electricity in the air. He pushed through the crowd, confused, then saw the officer. "Sir, do you own a calico cat named Minnie?" Nick blinked. "Yeah, why?" The officer glanced toward the house, then back at him with a look that carried both disbelief and respect. "She made the call." Nick laughed at first, a reflex, a defense, but no one else was laughing. Inside, the phone still sat on the counter, call log open. 911, outgoing. Nick slowly turned. Minnie sat there, calm as ever, her green eyes fixed on him. For the first time, he didn't laugh. News spread fast. By evening, Minnie was everywhere. Front page headlines, local TV features, children pressing their faces against the fence just to catch a glimpse of her. They called her a miracle, a hero, something extraordinary. But Minnie didn't care about cameras. She cared about patterns, about voices, about the unseen shift in the world when something wasn't right. And that night, long after the reporters left and the neighborhood went quiet again, Nick sat beside her on the couch. He looked at her differently now, not like a pet, like a partner. "You really understood, didn't you?" he said softly. Minnie blinked once. Outside, the street returned to stillness. But from that day forward, there was a quiet understanding in that house, one that carried a strange, almost unsettling truth. Minnie hadn't just learned a trick. She had been waiting for the moment she would need to use it. Minnie always believed she was destined for more than sunbeams and window watching, even if her humans, Tauline and Nick, thought otherwise. Because on that quiet evening after the television flickered off and the room settled into a soft hum, something inside her shifted, and the dream took hold stronger than ever. She wasn't just Minnie anymore. She was Commander Minnie, the first Calico astronaut in training. And in her mind, the living room transformed into a launch bay. The couch became a command module, and the scratching post behind her was now a towering rocket waiting to pierce the sky. She could almost feel the weight of the helmet tucked under her arm and the snug fit of her blue jumpsuit with its shining badge. Her face proud beside a streaking rocket crossing a golden star. And in this imagined world, every step she took had purpose. Every leap was training. Every flick of her tail part of a mission that would take her far beyond the glass of the back window and into the deep unknown, where the stars whispered secrets only the brave could hear. She trained relentlessly in her dream, racing across the hardwood floors like they were endless corridors of a space station, leaping onto shelves as if navigating zero gravity, her body light and precise. Though she knew the truth, space was not forgiving. Muscles weakened, balance vanished, and even a proud feline like her would need strength and discipline. So she imagined lifting invisible weights, pushing herself harder than ever before, determined to be ready for the call. Then came the hardest part, the water training, the dreaded simulation that all astronauts must endure. And though every instinct in her screamed against it, she forced herself to imagine floating, her paws drifting helplessly, her whiskers twitching as imaginary water crept too close to her nose, the sensation unbearable. Yet she pressed on, because heroes didn't quit. Even when the helmet itched and there was no way to scratch, even when fear crept in like a shadow across the stars. And in those moments, she reminded herself that astronauts were not just explorers, but thinkers, scientists, problem solvers. She pictured herself studying the cosmos, watching constellations shift, understanding the dance of planets, conducting experiments where kibble floated freely and had to be chased through the air like mischievous prey. And she laughed to herself at the thought, a silent, determined laugh, because even in space, a cat must eat. But space was not just wonder, it was danger too, vast and endless, filled with silence that could swallow you whole. And as Minnie imagined herself drifting above Earth, the blue glow far below, she felt a flicker of something new, not fear exactly, but respect for the unknown, a realization that adventure always carried risk, and yet that only made her dreams stronger. She would not just visit space, she would build something there, a small village on the moon, where cats could roam freely among the stars, where windows would stretch forever into the galaxy, and every night would be filled with stories of distant worlds. She could see it so clearly that it felt real, the launch countdown echoing in her ears, the vibration beneath her paws, the moment of liftoff when everything she had ever known would fall away. and she would rise into the infinite. And just as the dream reached its peak, just as the stars seemed close enough to touch, reality came crashing back with the sudden, chaotic arrival of Bun-Bun and Pippin, their playful energy bursting into her carefully constructed universe like an unexpected meteor shower. Bun-Bun pounced without warning. Pippin skidded across the floor in pursuit, and in an instant, the launch bay was a living room again, the rocket a scratching post, the mission interrupted by the undeniable truth of shared space and sibling chaos. Minnie blinked, her tail flicking in mild annoyance as her grand vision dissolved. But as she watched them tumble and play, something shifted once more. Perhaps they weren't astronaut material. Perhaps they lacked the focus or the imagination. But maybe, just maybe, they could still be part of the journey, because even the greatest explorers didn't travel alone. And as Minnie climbed back onto her cat tree, gazing out at the darkening sky where the first stars began to twinkle like distant beacons calling her name, she realized that her dream wasn't gone at all. It was simply waiting, growing, evolving. And one day, whether Bun-Bun and Pippin understood it or not, she would chase those stars. She would leap beyond the limits of her world. And when she returned, she would have stories no ordinary cat could ever tell. Stories of courage, of wonder, of the quiet, infinite beauty of space. And until that day came, she would train, she would imagine, and she would never stop believing that somewhere out there, among the stars, there was a place waiting just for her, Commander Minnie, the bravest little astronaut who ever dared to dream. Just Minnie and me. When I was just a baby kitten, small enough to think my own tail was a burglar, my mother Mimi told me the story that every cat hears sooner or later, the story of the famous 9 Lives. She told it with the tone of a family historian and the dramatic pauses of an actress who knew her audience was hanging on every whisker twitch. According to Mimi, our family did not merely believe in 9 lives. We had produced living proof of them in the form of my legendary uncle, Barracuda Billy, a sea-going cat with nerves of steel, paws of luck, and the mysterious ability to survive while every ship around him seemed to develop an immediate interest in sinking. Uncle Billy, she said, had prowled the halls of the mighty German battleship Bismarck during World War II like he owned the vessel, inspecting boots, stealing naps in forbidden corners, and glaring at sailors. Then came the great naval battle with Britain. Explosions, chaos, smoke, shouting, steel groaning against the sea. And when the Bismarck finally went down, there was Billy, floating in the cold Atlantic, with the baffled expression of a cat who had specifically requested dry accommodations. British sailors, astonished to find a feline survivor in the middle of a disaster, pulled him aboard their ship and decided any cat tough enough to outlast a battleship deserved room and board. They dried him off, fed him, and admired his calm. But within weeks, their own ship was torpedoed and sank, sending sailors scrambling for lifeboats and sending Uncle Billy right back into the water, where once again he bobbed around like a furry cork. Rescued a second time by more British sailors, Billy was by then no ordinary cat. He was a symbol, a mascot, a mystery, and apparently impossible to drown. They named him Barracuda Billy, partly because he seemed fierce and exotic, and partly because nobody wanted to call him that cat again. The sailors adored him. They scratched his ears, smuggled him treats, and likely consulted him on matters of weather, morale, and fish quality. Yet a troubling pattern had begun to emerge. Billy would arrive, inspect the ship, choose the best sleeping quarters, settle in as if signing a lease, and sooner or later, the vessel would be blasted into next Tuesday. Then came the HMS Ark Royal, a proud British aircraft carrier, and the next chapter in Billy's soggy career. If ships could talk, this one might have said, "Certainly nothing will happen to me," which is exactly the sort of boast the sea loves to punish. Sure enough, a German torpedo struck. The mighty Ark Royal was doomed, and once again, chaos broke loose, while my uncle, now a veteran of more naval catastrophes than any respectable cat should witness, found himself deposited into the frigid ocean for a third dramatic rescue. By this point, Mimi told me, sailors loved him and feared him in almost equal measure. On the one paw, he always survived. On the other paw, every vessel that welcomed him eventually took the express route to the ocean floor. Was Billy lucky because he lived, or unlucky because he brought disaster wherever he napped? My mother always answered this question with a thoughtful blink and a tail flick that meant both. She said Uncle Billy had the kind of luck that worked beautifully for one individual and terribly for everyone paying the repair bills. As a kitten, I found this both inspiring and worrying. I wanted to be brave like Billy, but I also did not want to be banned from transportation. I remember asking Mom whether Billy understood that ships kept sinking around him, and she said cats rarely trouble themselves with those thoughts. Only if dinner is still served on time. That sounded wise, although perhaps not wise enough for the Navy. As I grew older, I came to think of Uncle Billy as less of a menace and more of a furry philosopher, drifting from one disaster to the next, proving that survival is its own strange talent. Billy somehow wound up on a U.S. cruiser named the Portland in the South Pacific. Torpedoed, but left floating. This time everyone survived. Mimi, may her noble cat soul rest in eternal cat heaven, she would finish the story the same way every time. Mom looked at me lovingly, then said, "Minnie, people talk about 9 lives as if cats are careless, but that is not true. Cats are experts. We survive because we observe, we wait, and we know when to leap. But remember this too, whether you live 1 life or 9, never get too proud, never trust the sea, and never board a ship with your Uncle Billy." Just Minnie and Me. Cats in the Cradle. I didn't understand the song at first. It came drifting through the open window one warm afternoon, carried on the desert breeze like a whisper meant just for me. I was curled up on the back of the couch, my tail wrapped neatly around my paws, pretending to sleep, but listening to everything, like I always did. Cats in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon. Humans have a way of telling stories in songs. We cats, we live them. Mom, Mimi, sat quietly, her eyes soft but distant. She wasn't watching the room. She was somewhere else, somewhere back in time. That's when I remembered him. Marnie, she used to call him, my dad. He wasn't like the other cats in the neighborhood. He didn't stay. He didn't patrol the same fence line every night or nap in the same patch of sun every afternoon. Marnie wandered. Days at a time, he'd disappear. As kittens, we didn't understand it. My brothers and sisters would huddle close to Mimi, asking in soft, nervous meows where he had gone. I'd sit a little apart, watching the door, convinced he'd stroll in at any second like nothing had happened. Sometimes he did. He'd come back smelling like 100 different places: dust, alleyways, strange kitchens, other humans. He'd nuzzle Mimi like he'd never left, give us each a quick lick on the head, then curl up and sleep like the world hadn't missed him. We loved him anyway. But there was always something just out of reach, like trying to catch a shadow. That afternoon, as the song played on, something shifted. "When you coming home, Dad?" "I don't know when." I lifted my head. For the first time, I wasn't just hearing the music, I was understanding it. That wasn't just a human story. That was ours. Mimi let out a slow breath. "Your father," she said softly, almost to herself. "He just had the road in him." The road. I didn't know what that meant exactly. Cats don't have roads the way humans do. But we do have instincts. Some of us stay, some of us roam. "Marnie loved you," she added, looking at me now. I believed her. But love, I realized, doesn't always mean staying. As the song reached its end, I hopped down from the couch and padded over to her. I pressed my head gently against her paw, and she smiled, that quiet, knowing smile she had. "We're not like that," she whispered. And she was right, because later that evening, when the sun dipped low and the sky turned that soft golden color, I didn't go looking for the horizon. I stayed, right there, with Mimi. And in that moment, I understood something my father never quite did. Home isn't where you wander from. It's where you choose to return, and eventually, where you choose to remain.